Hi, guys. Welcome back to the My and John podcast.
Hello.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, I guess one of the things that I want to address, or not address, or discuss is something that just happened more recently, and I think it's a good time to talk about it and educate the people and stuff like that. So we just came from celebrating a big annual event called Lunar New Year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you might hear some people refer to it as Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, and it's basically the New Year festival for some Asian cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure, Vietnamese, Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
Cambodian, and Koreans. Maybe a few more. I'm not sure, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to discuss it because it's definitely something that in my family we did not celebrate it, but obviously in your family it was something that was celebrated, um, and is a big event in your family, in your culture, and what have you. I was just curious, for me, because I know that it's something that you've mentioned that you are like, it's probably one of your favorite holidays of the year, and I don't know, maybe you could just discuss sort of what its significance is, and
Okay.
what kind of makes it so special for you.
Yeah. So I think for me, growing up, I left Vietnam when I was about 8 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, I loved it because from as far as I can remember, that was when I had a chance to get new clothes. So my mom would buy me new clothes,
Mm.
and I would be able to eat delicious dishes that I normally don't get. We come from, I would say, poor family, or my parents are teachers, so it's not like they have a lot of these extra spending. So New Year was a time when they would spend a little bit more, so they would get basically, yeah, new clothes, good food, and then everywhere you see flowers and decorations. And then at night for New Year's Eve, you would hear the firecrackers. So it was a lot of excitement for a kid, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I remember there's also family visitings. So I see all families coming together, and everyone was just bubbly happy. So whatever issues or problem they had, they kind of like had to put it aside, or whatever differences that they have, they kind of put it aside, and they are able to either reconcile or just focus on bringing that good energy because they
Mm-hmm.
believe it's good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, thinking back, I think it's just that really fun, happy atmosphere that
Mm-hmm.
I'm drawn to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember because and I get a break from school, so it's fun. So for me, it's all of those values of like family time, being happy and worry free, and just kind of like enjoy things. And it didn't feel like people were worried at all. People were just happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
I know, in my family, um, we celebrate the regular calendar New Year, and one of the traditions I have, fond memories of when my cousins and I were growing up is, it usually would start with my grandmother, because she's like, she was the elder in the family, and our tradition was, on New Year's Eve, all the kids would gather in a room, and all the parents and sort of the elders would, they would literally take, well, at the time it was, we still had like, the $1 and the $2 coins and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Now it's sort of graduated to bills, but I have fond memories of my grandmother just, taking handfuls of coins and just throwing it, in a big room, and all the cousins, we would all just sort of fight over how much money we would collect, and it was, it was a fun time to make a little extra, money to start the new year with. But I know that, since my grandmother passed, my father was the one that kind of carried that on. But in your culture, they do something a little bit different. They hand out envelopes.
The red envelopes.
Yeah.
We call it the lisi,
Mhm.
right? And that's just signify lucky money, because the more generous you are, the more you're giving away. You give out to little children, or you give out to senior as well too. So yes, you remind me that, yes, I think we all love getting this money. That was a time where, yay, money to buy more new things, toys, whatever we wanted. Yeah.
And I know that there's a few things, because like for me, when it's celebrating the regular calendar New Year, we don't do much preparation. We just plan ahead with friends or family, and and then we drink champagne on the countdown, and you just typically it's you set a few goals, and a lot of times you set goals that end up failing, but in your culture, I've noticed, or in our culture, I should say, I've noticed a few sort of traditions with regards to how to prepare for New Year's and stuff like that, and it's definitely a lot more. There's a lot more going on,
Yeah.
I know some of the things, like for example, is with regards to you want to clean up your house. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of games played.
Yeah. There's games played.
And money and.
You mentioned cleaning up the house. Yeah, it's important where before New Year, what you do is you want to clean it so that you are tidying. And then after New Year, the first 3 days of New Year, you try not to clean, because in a way they kind of say like you don't want to sweep your luck away. Right? And then in the new year, the first day of the new year, it's so important who comes into your house. So they do tell you that make sure you do not go to anyone's house on New Year Day uninvited. Because if you carry like a bad energy, or maybe your zodiac sign is kind of like the opposite of the homeowner's sign, that means there's a clash. And when you unintentionally come uninvited, you might bring bad energy, right? So that's kind of like Eastern theories is, and that has to do with Feng Shui and all the zodiac. And I guess, if you think about it, it does make sense. In general, they said you want your year to whichever energy you want for your entire year, that's the kind of energy you want to start your year with. So you want people with great energy. So if you're dealing with, some trauma, or if you're going through some, issues and things like that, on the New Year Day, it's not the time where you want to be visiting anybody, right? Yeah, and so that's one of the interesting tradition as well, too.
Yeah, and I know that, one sort of bad omen that they have is making sure that you do things like or I don't know if it's a bad omen, but clear your debts.
Yeah. You also want to clear a debt, because you don't want to be owing anybody, because it's always about whatever you do in the beginning of a year, it signifies how your whole entire year looks like, right? I guess if you believe in these things, right? Some people are like, oh, that's very superstitious, right? But whatever it is that you believe, it's one of those things where it's part of your culture and tradition, right? Yeah.
Cool. No, I definitely just wanted to discuss that a little bit, because it was something that, like I mentioned before, it was never really a holiday that I had celebrated or that I was around. I had a good friend in high school who was Vietnamese, and he always used to bring me to the Tet festival, the New Year's festival, and it was more so just to go and see and meet the young Vietnamese ladies, and and eat the the delicious food and stuff like that. But I really had no idea what was going on, and it's been interesting to get to know and stuff like that. So I wanted to sort of acknowledge that
Yeah.
and help sort of educate people who might not celebrate that holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, we come from two different backgrounds. John's Filipino and I'm Vietnamese, so we get to learn quite a lot about our own culture as well, which is nice. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, no problem.
And I guess continue on. We kind of talked a little bit about some different topics that we might want to cover today. And I think a topic that there's so many topics that we can cover, and eventually we'll be inviting guests to come onto our show where we can kind of pick their brains and ask them to share their own stories that we can learn from. But for now, we want to talk about a topic around entrepreneurship. And this is because, I mean, I've heard a lot of people who have asked us, like, how did you even get started on your entrepreneurship journey, or what makes you do the kind of things that you're doing, or why did you choose to kind of live life this way? And then I've also heard people share that they themselves want to be a business owner, but they don't even know where to start or what to do, or maybe perhaps start a side hustle. So I think today we can share a little bit more. There's a lot to our stories, but maybe just some quick snapshots of us back in the day, and kind of what you think started that wheel of entrepreneurship. So why don't you start? Because you come from a family, to your dad is an entrepreneur as well too. So maybe you can touch on that and share your own story.
Well, I definitely grew up exposed to a lot of entrepreneurship, but it actually didn't start that way because my parents were both corporate workers. My father, he was a mechanical engineer, and he worked at a factory for many years. When I was born and when he moved to Canada and stuff like that. And my mom was an accountant, and she literally worked at the same company. It was her first job after she moved to Canada, and she kept that same job right until she had retired.
Wow.
Which was like 33 years, I think it was. And so they when I was growing up, they were working corporate jobs. But I know in the late 80s, my dad, I won't get into too much detail of it, but my dad got into a really bad car accident. And he he was fishing and drinking and hanging out with his coworkers. And he came to a competition. My brother and I used to swim competitively. And my dad decided that, after a weekend of enjoying himself, he would come to our swimming competition and instead of going home and resting and stuff like that. But he got into a bad car accident and was sort of forced to take some time off work. And then shortly after that, he got laid off. And I remember it being a very interesting, difficult time because we were not living a comfortable life. We grew up like I wouldn't say struggling or anything like that, but my mom would she'd do things like she would always make our clothes and stuff like that, and she just knew how to be very frugal and stuff like that. So obviously losing the job was a challenge, and our first sort of exposure to entrepreneurship was actually my uncle. My uncle decided that he would, there was a large community growing in the city we grew up in, which is Brampton, and there was a large Filipino community that was starting to develop at that time in the the mid to late 80s. And my uncle opened up a Filipino store who, I think to all our friends and stuff like that would still remember. It was called TJ&J, which was my uncle, my aunt, and my cousin. And it was a community store. It was a convenience store, and they used to sell all types of Filipino groceries and stuff like that. And then what ended up happening was my dad, from what I remember, was sort of looking to do something else because he couldn't go back to his company, and he had the idea to expand with my uncle, and he sort of took half a unit, and he invested my parents, a bunch of their savings into getting a big walk-in freezer, and they decided to start selling frozen fish and frozen meat, and that was sort of his segue into becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah, and then he expanded, and things went well, and then what ended up happening was he sort of got recruited, if you will, by one of his suppliers who ran a bigger operation of wholesaling frozen foods, and he was all the way in Markham. And I remember being, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old and driving 2 to 3 hours to Markham because traffic was crazy and they didn't have a 407 at that time. So we would drive, 2 to 3 hours every single day, 7 days a week, out to Markham, to his store, and then we would drive the 2 to 3 hours home every day. And I remember having to pack these 20-kilo boxes of fish, and I would sit there for 8 to 10 hours a day, and I would pack 20-kilo boxes of fish into 10-pound boxes of fish, and that's what I would do for hours upon hours in this, deep, dark warehouse, back of the warehouse and stuff like that. And then from there, my father, he did that for several years until the original store that my uncle ran had to, my uncle was sort of about to go out of business because of, he had personal issues and stuff like that. And so instead of losing that business, my dad decided to give up his sort of stake in this, large manufacturing wholesale fish company, and he moved back to take over TJ&J. And then from there, he expanded. I won't get into. I guess I can't get into too much detail because I could go on for days. He expanded, and he started a little takeout Filipino restaurant.
Yeah.
And from there, he started a Filipino travel agency, and he used to run it out of this, a couple of units and stuff like that, and and that sort of sparked my beginning of my entrepreneurship mentality.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. And just listening to your story, I kind of draw a few lessons from there. Is that honestly, it wasn't like your dad deciding to, but something pretty dramatic happened, which is the car accident. And sometime when we look at life and we think about these tragic events that happen to us, but everything happened for a reason, because who knows, maybe if it wasn't for that and he took some time off and then his job laid him off, right, he wouldn't be an entrepreneur, right, if he had a comfortable job. I don't know if he liked his job or not, but sometimes when you're comfortable there, you're not going to try something different. And so I do hear a lot of stories about people being laid off, and that was an external factor that forced them to do something about it, right? And so if, things that are happening to you out there that are tragic, just kind of know it can play two ways, right? You can dwell on it, feel miserable, and just kind of like let it get you down, or you can say, this is an opportunity where I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try, because what else? I got nothing to lose, right? So that sounds like...
I'm going to turn the microphone around to you, though. because I'm curious as to, how things started for you. I know that your parents were both teachers. They're educators and stuff like that. They live very simply, and it doesn't take a lot to make them happy. But you had kind of no sort of parent that was into entrepreneurship, and if you like, they were very risk adverse and stuff like that. But career wise, it was definitely something that that was, you wanted to take a different sort of a different approach. And how did that begin to, what was the spark that ignited that entrepreneurship in you? Because
For
it's
sure.
not very clear.
Well, funny thing is, my parents are teachers back in Vietnam, and when we moved here, my mom was fortunate enough to continue to be a Vietnamese teacher. My dad couldn't. He didn't pick up on the language as quick, so he had to work factory jobs. But now that I think back, I do have entrepreneurial in my blood, because both of my grandparents were hustlers.
Huh.
So my dad's mom, which I call Bandoi, she used to run a shop in like a local market. And my grandma and grandpa on my dad's side ran like a factory back in Vietnam. But they passed away long ago when my mom was still young. I've never met them.
So
I never grew up with them, but I do hear of their stories. And living in Vietnam, my mom was a teacher, but she also, before coming here, she had to do some side hustle. So she started selling desserts. I feel like when you're in these Asian country, there's a lot of people that are hustling, doing these little things. She was not like a CEO of a company or anything like that. But there is that kind of entrepreneurial in my blood. However, coming here, so I think it is a little bit already in my blood. But coming here, I think what really sparked it was, I feel like what sparked it when I was young is very different than my motivation now. Because when I was young, I feel like my parents, coming here anyways, they were constantly arguing about money. And in my young mind, I feel like growing up, I needed to do something where I could make a lot of money. So, but when I was younger, I didn't really think it has to be a business. It could be a job. It could be anything, as long as I make a lot of money. However, after finishing university and landed on my, great initial job, my entry job, and having that dream and that goal of climbing up the corporate ladder, I very soon quickly find myself hating like the things that I do as a day in and out. And then I, of course, hear stories about people who are entrepreneur, business owner, who make their own time or like have their own schedule, is able to generate whatever level of income they're willing to work hard for, right? And I think being someone who is very ambitious and competitive at heart, I just felt like, I see other people, and mind you, this is me younger too. I see other people and I'm always kind of in a way jealous, right? And I said, if they can do it, why can't I? If they can have that huge house, why can't I have a huge house? If they can drive fancy, nice car, why can't I drive a fancy, nice car? If they can have all the money, why can't I? So I'm always comparing myself, and I feel that the best way for me to fully kind of, tap into my capability is to be my own boss. Because when I was working at that first initial job, I was like, the level that I rise was determined by how many positions are available. And so no matter how good I am, there's only one manager, there's only one VP, there's only one CEO. And so I'm competing with other people. And in a sense, I feel this like politics. And there's other things which I didn't like. I wanted an opportunity. And back then, to me, being your own boss means you have this idea, you get out there, you get dirty, you do whatever you have to do, but you're not competing with anyone else besides yourself, right? And of course you're competing with other business, but mainly the first thing is yourself. And I like that idea better. Mind you, 15, 17 years later, I learned a lot about entrepreneurship, where I looked back and I was like, boy, was I wrong about what I was thinking in my head. And so looking back, of course, there are many things I would tell my younger self, wanting to be my own boss, of some of the lessons that I've learned. But I guess, when you're young and you have certain limited knowledge, right, about life, so you assume. So I feel like my drive was really seeing other business owner doing well,
So
having big things.
I'm curious then, to put you on the spot. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what would you tell yourself, let's say your 15, 16, 18-year-old self, coming fresh out of high school, let's say, what are some of the things that you would tell yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I would tell myself to spend more time to look back into what would make me happy, because I feel like, and know what my skills are, what my strengths are. And even though it might look like it's a job that is not going to pay me much, but if I can just get my foot in the door, and if that's the arena I want to get in. For example, I got into corporate financing, but I don't think I actually love corporate financing. Like, I love public speaking, I love putting together events. I'm a very creative and artistic person. So, but and even going to university, I kind of look and say, what salary is the most beside doctor and lawyer? I didn't want, an engineer. So I decided to go. But instead of looking at it from just money, I should just take a look and say, you know what? Okay, after graduating from, let's say, a creative field, maybe I only make 30,000. Someone in the finance world started maybe 40, 50. But that's okay, because if I love and I'm good at what I do and I stick to it, eventually it's not even about the money. I'll get there, because in any industry, in any field, some of the best people make the same as the other people. You can be a top paying doctor and you can be a top paying artist, right? But the problem is, a lot of the time, I'm taught that if you choose the other creative fields or the things that you think you enjoy, it might not pan out, right? However, so I think going back, I would say just really stop comparing what you want to do in your future based on how much money you can make. Because you can make money in any field you choose, anything you want. Maybe I wouldn't be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm a designer. Maybe I'm something else. You know what I mean? Or maybe, I'm a host on a talk show. Who knows, right? But I didn't have that confidence, and I didn't even know where to start. I could have been like, a coffee girl at like MTV or something if I loved being in that arena, but I wasn't supported to go into that. So I would tell myself that keep on exploring what you love and what you feel is the environment you like. Don't worry about the money, especially when you're young. You got nothing to pay, but it's us worrying about the future. Oh, I wonder if by that time, I need to be successful. I need to be this. But you will if you keep on doing what you enjoy. And it's a process of elimination. If you get into it and you realize it's not for you, well, then you can continue, but in the same arena. I feel like deep down, we kind of all know what we love to do, and we kind of know what our strengths are. What are some of the things that, we can excel at? So that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got into a career, you studied engineering and then you got into finance, which is absolutely an industry that there's not really much room to be creative and artistic with. But I found that now, getting kind of the first front row seat on watching you build your career, it's been sort of incredible to watch, because I've seen you wait tables, I've seen you knock on doors, I've seen you do marketing and do sales, and you've done online stuff, and you've done kind of a little bit of a lot of different things. And the sort of the interesting thing to see in that is that that's allowed you to be so creative in so many ways. You like, to see sort of to see you sort of like learn, and you sort of you take these ideas and then you take a course and then you learn this new skill and then you take that skill and then you apply that skill into your business, and then you take a new, let's say another course, and you learn that skill and you apply it into your business, and you see it sort of piling up on top of each other to now, you can sort of take any business, and you've got so much experience and knowledge in so many different
arenas and different jobs
that you can kind of take any startup business, and I can see you take it from, I haven't seen you take it to this multi-million-dollar industry yet, or business yet, but I can definitely see you take any sort of business or company or industry, in any industry, and give it wings or give it legs, and it's been incredible to watch so far. But it's allowed you also to be creative and artistic in your own beautiful way.
Yeah, for sure. I find that what it allowed me to, once I start kind of do a lot more of like the practice of being self-aware, I realize things that I enjoy in my life are like, has to do with creating. But creating could be like writing. From when I was young, I love journaling. I
love making lists.
Yeah, I love poetry. I love writing. I even encouraged to write short stories. I love acting as well too, even though I'm shy, because back then I said, English is my second language. I wasn't confident in that. I also love speaking. I love telling stories. I wish there was a way that there was a guidance counselor who can help me say, okay, these are the things that you love. These are the kind of positions or jobs or careers that maybe you should take a look at. And you just start in entry level and work your way up. You know what I mean? But I mean, so then, of course, so I was driven by money, and that's why I became an entrepreneur. But the funny that I've learned is if you're driven by money, maybe you should be an entrepreneur, because there's so many ways to make a lot of money in a job, in a corporate job, climbing up the corporate ladder. And once you have a good job, you save your money, invest in your money, right? Invest your money into real estate and whatever it is that you want to invest into. But truly, deep down, if you want to be an entrepreneur, in my own experience, is if you are looking to create change, you're looking to do something different, or you have an idea and you don't want to try to convince other people, but you said, I have this idea, I believe in it, I'm gonna do it myself. But you also have to be willing to work very hard for very little money in the beginning as well. Or no money.
In the middle.
Or no money. And you build yourself until it grows, and then you're able to invest. So being an entrepreneur is different than being an investor, because there are many people with great jobs, save money, and they invest. But being an entrepreneur is a different class of its own, and whether you're ready for it or not is you really have to kind of ask yourself some questions. And there are so many ways to get started nowadays, especially with the online. I find there's so many ways compared to back then for you to start a side hustle, right? You can open up a Shopify. You can sell products online. You can do Uber Eats. Those are self-employed. It starts with being self-employed, starting a gig on your own, and then figuring how to build a team and create a system and expand from there. But yeah, well, I know I also have questions for you about your entrepreneurship journey, but I feel like we're kind of on a time constraint, as we normally like to do this right before we pick up our kids. And so we wanted to kind of wrap it up and hopefully let you guys know that if you enjoy some of the stories we share, if you have any questions, please, if you're watching YouTube or listening to this on Spotify, send us your comment as well. And so, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
No, I'm gonna leave it on a cliffhanger because I want you guys all to come back, and I'm excited to sort of share some more and ask some more questions, and I want to. I'm excited for the part 2 of our second episode.
Yeah, for sure. We'll continue with part 2, digging into John's story of entrepreneurship. Okay, guys, have a good rest of the week. Have a great weekend. See you soon.
Bye.